Hello and welcome to our podcast. This is Joshua, I'm Sal.
Hello.
And people have asked me in the past about love. You know, how can I have love? You know, what is love? Whatever. So I thought it'd be great just to explore the meaning of love and not just what it means to Joshua and myself, but also perhaps in a grander scale. Love is a very confused word in our culture. People apply the word love to all manner of things. I love you to death. I love you so much I want to eat you. To give two weird examples. But I would like to begin with something from the Sufi poet and mystic Khalil Gibran, who he was in the 1800s. And his love was love for God. But, you know, love is love. So it's just a snippet, so I won't bore you. Love gives naught but itself, and takes naught but from itself. Love possesses not, nor would it be possessed. For love is sufficient unto love. When you love, you should not say, God is in my heart, but rather, I am in the heart of God. And think not you can direct the course of love. For love, if it finds you worthy, directs your course. In a way, that is it. We could finish here. But then we miss out so much that we call love and it's not love. So,
just to break that apart, like, what is that difference? You know, I am God, God loves me, or the universe. I fail to see what the difference is. Surely it's just love there, what he's describing.
No.
So what is that difference? What is that switch?
All right. Well, here he is actually focusing on what true love is,
yeah,
which is a fountain without beginning or end. And to understand that, we actually need to move away from that,
yeah,
and we need to come to ego. So we can understand love better by understanding what it is not.
mm-hmm.
And there is what we call love, which is part of ego. And then there's true love, which is beyond ego.
Yeah.
But it will come through ego.
Mm-hmm.
But it is beyond ego. So the average human being who is lost within their ego, what I mean by this is that we are biological machines with 3 brains. When all 3 brains are working together, we have self-awareness.
Mm-hmm.
We know we're here, we know we exist because of the triangulation of the 3 brains. If you've got 2 brains, you've got like 2 dimensions. Yeah, it's like a sort of a linear, 2-dimensional, it's just linear, 3-dimensional, you get depth.
Mm-hmm.
So with human beings, 3 brains, 3 dimensions, we get depth, we get self-observance, we know we're here. But let's not confuse that with will. But I'm not going to go there for now. So as biological beings, we are genetically programmed, and that is very much part of the physical body, although that sort of dovetails to the others. But then there is the emotional body, which is the hormonal system. And then there is the mental body, which is the abstract thinking and perception. We are, so often when we speak of love as human beings, you know, I think there's about 8 different sorts of love. People have identified 8 different sorts of love, but they're all ego love.
Yeah.
Minus one, perhaps. Someone else, I don't know if I wrote about that here somewhere. Yes. No, I didn't. I saw on the net 4 basic forms of love. But, you know, it's irrelevant because there's only 2 forms of love. There's real love, which is from the soul, and love from the ego. But talking about the love from the ego, biologically speaking, we have a sexual attraction to another human being. And I don't really know how this relates to you, to be honest, because this form of attraction is phenomenal and is to do with the need to procreate. Mm-hmm. And so the woman usually is very, very sensitive, not necessarily aware, in fact, unlikely to be aware, that at a phenomenal level, they are picking up smells from the other person who their system says, we could have a good baby here because our immune systems are compatible. Yeah? And so there is that basic attraction to another person, and then you come together and you have sex. And they call it love. But that is not love. That is simply the need to procreate. Although we have now become divorced from that, modern human beings, we put so many lotions, so many different smells on our bodies that we can no longer smell who the partner is, like real. And so there's a lot of false, they call it false positive, right? Right, yeah. And so you become attracted to another person, but not because of that basic essential biological reaction to, yes, I can procreate with this one. You know, all the signals are right. So now people will fall for the mind of the other person, or fall because they've got the right physique, right muscles, or fall because there's some sort of emotional connection. But, you know, we are 3 brain beings. So an ideal relationship needs all 3 brains to be in mesh with each other. So if you want to have a good relationship with another human being, you want to connect with the other person physically, phenomenal, emotionally, because you can both be children together, or you can both be adults together. But if one is a child, the other one's an adult, it doesn't work, because one's telling the other one off all the time. And mentally, because you have a similar perception of reality. But even when you have all those 3, you don't have love. You still have a biological come together. But that is as close to love as 2 human beings can get before they actually engage true love. So that is the ideal. That's, in terms of relationship, that is what we aim for. And I never managed it in my first 3 relationships. They all had something to offer, but none of them had all 3. So I recognize the difference. I know the difference from my experience. I can taste it. And this is why so many of us in this day and age, we end up with so many relationships through our lifetime before we've gained enough experience till we get to our 40s, 50s, when we engage with another person with whom we're clicking. Physically, we're clicking emotionally, we're clicking mentally. But I digress. So anyway, so we're talking about love from the ego. And the sexual one is the one that most people connect with. And after a few years, the shine falls off. Because the problem with human beings is that we're all damaged. We are emotionally, psychologically damaged. And we end up being physically damaged, although that is not an impairment to love. And because we are damaged, we look for people to have a relationship with, because we all need companionship. We all need someone, even if it's a cat. But we all need someone to be needed by. And this is one of those confusions as to the meaning of love. Because we are needy creatures, all of us, we're all needy. Our egos are needy. Because we're so damaged when we're young. We grow up with a black hole of need inside us. Our parents, in an ideal world, would have focused on us, they would have nurtured us, they would have watered. If we were a plant, they would have watered, exposed us to the sunlight, we would grow strong. Instead, most of us grow distorted because we don't get enough sunshine, we don't get enough love, we don't get enough water, we don't get enough nutrients. And so we grow up gnarled and distorted. But you know, even a distorted tree, even a gnarled tree can be beautiful. But that's how we're set. And so we grow up with this deep chasm of need, this black hole. And so we're forever looking for people who will love us. But it's not actually love we're after. We think it's love. What we want is to be seen for who we are without judgment. We want to be with a person. This is why so many people go for animals. We want to be with a person who can see us with all our faults and accept us as we are, without judgment.
Yeah, the issue is that so often people are afraid to be seen for fear of the rejection of being themselves.
And that's the dilemma.
Yeah.
But that's part of the growth, that's part of the learning.
Yeah.
But it is essential to appreciate this, that what we want is to be seen and accepted without judgment. And what we also need is to belong. We need to belong to a group, to a person, to an individual. We need to feel safe. So, because we've got so many levels, the most basic level is to belong to the group. We need to feel safe. And then, at an emotional level, we want to be understood, to be felt, to be experienced in a way that doesn't judge us. Because the problem with humanity, the basic problem we all have, is that we all, like I said, we have three brains, and one of them is the mind. is the judgment section. And our world is a reflection of ourselves. And who hasn't noticed that we live in a world filled with rules and regulations? How to be, how to comfort. It's rules for everything. And they're building rules by the hundreds on a daily, maybe not, slight exaggeration, but hundreds every year for sure. Every government is constantly bringing more and more rules and regulations all the time. It's a nightmare scenario, but this is how we are in ourselves. The world is a reflection of ourselves. And so we are filled with all these regulations. So our minds are constantly judging our behavior because we need to belong. We need to belong to feel safe. So our mind is all the time judging how to express ourselves, how to comport ourselves. So we're in a total state of anxiety most of the time. And this is one reason why so many of us want to be by ourselves for so long every day. Because that is the one time when we have peace and quiet. Because we're not concerned that others are going to be judging us. This is an existential dilemma of humanity. And so we look for another person to have a relationship with. But the other person is a reflection of where we're at. And as we're growing up, we are filled with all these anxieties of belonging and yet wanting to be seen, wanting to be loved, needing to have sexual interaction with another. This potpourri is a nightmare scenario. And it gets in the way of love. Because true love is to see with all of our senses. I've said that a little bit earlier. I was going to say this a little bit later, but never mind, here we are. So true love is to see with all of our senses. Not just outwardly, other people, the environment, but inwardly. True love is when we can see ourselves with all our faults, with all our damage, with all our weaknesses. This is step number one. So true love is actually to see, except we can't see because we're blind. And we're blinded by the mind. The mind that is judging all the time, criticizing all the time. In a way, the mind is like a filter. It's a filter on reality. And love is the sun. But it's the sun inside us, the soul. The soul, the fragment of soul within each human being is like a sun. And the sun is shining all the time. However, the mind is like a set of filters. And the more emotional distress we have within ourselves, the more dark and convoluted those filters are, and the less we see reality. So many of you, I imagine so many of you, because you wouldn't be listening here unless you've been trying to find what the truth is in your lives. And part of that searching has been, I'm sure you've heard it before, reality. What is reality? People want to know what reality is. They go to all manner of books left, right, and center to find out what reality is. But reality is when those filters have clarified, they never disappear, but they turn into glass windows so we can see clearly through them. So the sun's rays can emanate through the filters of our mind and our emotions and our physical needs. That clarity allows us to see the world as it is. And when that happens, the mind is quiet. There are no words. There is feeling. Not emotions. The emotions will be there in the background. Emotions don't go away, but they're on idling speed. If you think of a car, when you stopped at the traffic lights, you're just on idling. The engine doesn't turn off. And that's how emotions should be. They need to rev up when the need arises, but otherwise they should be in idling speed. Most of the time, emotions in people, because of our anxiety, they're over-revving. We cannot see the world as it is. It's one of the filters. It gets in the way. The physical filters, our addictions, the foods that we eat, which block our system. We block our perception with poisons. So to see reality, we need to clear the filters from our physical, from our emotional, and from our mental. This is why to be healthy, we need to address all the levels. This is why when people go to be healed, oh, I've got this symptom, that symptom, you can't fix the symptoms. You need to deal with the causes. You need to clear the filters.
This reminds me of a juvenile client that I was working with. You know, she's about 12, and you know, she experienced some trauma, and we spoke about it. Brought her awareness to it, and you know, she kind of really did well with that. And then the next time I saw her, she said, "The whole world looks so different to me now. Everything's so bright. The world just is totally different because she'd removed these filters." It's very true.
You know, I used to experience that when I trained in Gestalt, and we used to come together as a group over the years, and every now and then the teachers would point to one of us, you know, speak. We'd start speaking, and somehow they managed to whittle us into a space where we were confronted with an emotion which was out of our awareness. But in that confrontation, as we began to really experience it, you start to sort of hyperventilate. As you're experiencing that intensity. And then when we'd done that work, it was, for a minute, the world was real.
Yeah.
Everything had gone quiet. They say that about, well, I've seen that in films, I don't know if it's true, but when you think you're going to die, someone is going to shoot you, say, and then the bullet doesn't work. And like, you thought, you were sure, you were convinced you were going to die. And now suddenly, oh, I'm alive. And just for that little time, suddenly the world is real. You can see everything clearly because everything is shut down. And all you've got is the clarity of the soul shining through. Yeah. Hey guys, you could be like that most of the time. It could be the norm.
What was the point that I was going to make about how it works? I mean, it's just been in the past, how it's been for me, and how I see people living out their patterns with regards to love. So, you know, when you meet somebody and you're attracted to them, if you don't have that level of integration, are we really seeing, we always think that love is from the heart, but are we actually seeing it, the illusion with the mind? The mind is creating this illusion that we're in love.
No, bear in mind that it's complicated because you've got physical, emotional needs, and you've got mental needs. You know, that it's a potpourri, but that is no reason to dismiss it. what we, as human beings, what we seek is a connection with another where we can meet physically, emotionally, and mentally. Certainly for a personal relationship, you need that connection. I've had a connection with women in my life where only 2 of those were connected and the third was missing. And it doesn't quite work. It can carry you, you can go a long way away, but there's a lot of compromises, way too many. And there's always that third jingly because you're not congruent. Yeah. So you actually do need, you can have a relationship where you're mentally in the same space, emotionally in the same space, but physically you're not there because maybe you're in the body, the other person is in their emotions. You can still come together, but you're never gonna quite gel. Yeah, because if you're in your body, you're having sex, you're in your body. The other person is in their emotions, and they're not really going to meet you in the same way.
Yeah,
it's not possible. There's a missing dimension. Yeah. Or if you're in your minds, maybe you want to talk French or Russian to each other and talk dirty. Maybe that's what makes it work. But if you're in your emotions, maybe not.
Yeah.
So, you need to have congruency. And the more congruency, the more real the relationship becomes. But that usually doesn't come till one is, there must be exceptions clearly, till one is more experienced in life, till we've dealt with more of our backlog of emotional trauma and mental belief systems. They're just as bad.
Yeah.
They get in the way. So we want to be seen and we need to be seen. So we're all looking for love, but we cannot find love. We want to be seen, but we can't see the other. It takes 2 to tango. And if we, usually, this is the way it usually goes. We're young, we're in our early 20s, we're sex machines. That was totally true for me, unfortunately. And so the woman, for me, is an object for my needs, which are overriding everything about me. And so I choose a woman because of my hormonal need to go and do my thing. I wasn't alone. Just about everyone else around me was in the same space. Certainly all the men around me were in the same space. There's nothing wrong for that, We need to repopulate the earth. But it's not necessarily a relationship. And it doesn't bode well for the future of mankind. But it's something we have to go through. Not everyone's like that, but if you're very highly sexually charged, if you've got a lot of testosterone inside you, unfortunately, it does rule the way we are in the world.
I'm so grateful for, being older now.
Me too.
Me too. It was painful in a good way. Well, I don't know. That carnal desire and all of that just clouded me so much. It's great to have that calm down.
Yeah. Because
that was really clouding me.
Well, it ruled my roost for, I spent most of my youth trying to understand sexual energy. So from my 20s, I was already into yoga and tantra, and I went through so many different groups, teachers, trying to understand it all. They all screwed me up because they didn't understand. Because they got their information from books.
More acting, isn't it?
Well, no, they believe it. But the thing is, you cannot get information from books. You only get information from experience. You've got to do something, fall down, hurt your knees. Ouch, that's painful. Think twice next time. The only way to learn in this world, unfortunately, is through personal experience. My mother used to say, the devil knows more, not because he's the devil, but because he's been around a long time. Yeah? And the other one is, you can never teach anybody anything. They have to learn through their own experience. They have to fall down a few times to learn from it. And so when we come to love, it's the same thing. We have to learn through our mistakes. Some people never do. But regardless, that is the only way. We have to learn from our mistakes. We have to be willing to make mistakes. We have to experience the pain, because it is through those mistakes. Because remember what I said, love is to see ourselves. We need to see ourselves. We need to see ourselves being horrid. We need to see ourselves being nice. We need to see ourselves being addicted. We need to see ourselves being liars. We need to see everything, all the worst things that we imagine as being worse. We need to see ourselves in every facet and realize, actually, I'm more than that. There's no other way. How can you hope to love yourself unless you can see all the vulgarity, all the dirtiness, all the horrible things, all the pettiness? You know, we all carry that to a greater or lesser extent, because that is how we were formed when we were young. That is what we saw in the world around us. And we learn to be conniving. We learn to navigate the world. We learn to manipulate other people, to get our needs met. What is our needs? To have someone focus on us. Bottom line, that's what we're always after, to have someone focus on us. We are needy. And so we come to the crux of the matter, that we cannot get love from another human being until we can see ourselves clearly and accept ourselves with all our damage, with all our nastiness, with all our pettiness. We accept ourselves. And in the process, we find that we can accept others. We cannot accept others unless we can accept ourselves. So we go and we look for other people who will see us, who will love us. And what happens is we end up with a... So if we're a sadist, we end up with a masochist. So the masochist will give themselves to us, hoping that we will love them. And we will give them the odd little bone here and there to keep them happy whilst they focus on us. Gradually, the masochist realizes that they're not getting their needs met because you're giving, 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 and the other one is just taking, taking, taking. There's, you know, it's sad. I laugh, but it's sad. But that is how we are in relationships. We give or we take. Seldom do we meet in the middle. And but that is part of growing up. And love isn't, you know, we talk about love being compromised. Yes, of course there's always compromise. But compromise has got to be 55, 45, back and forth, something like that. You know, it hasn't been, I compromise most of the time and you take most of the time. We've got to really come to the center. And then we find that we don't actually need to compromise that much. There's always compromise, okay? I'm a man, I can tell you, I'm always compromising to the woman. But she would say the same. Because we all see the world from our little box. So there are many forms of so-called love, but they're not real love. It's all about need. Parents doing with their children. And, you know, having children is, in a way, I know that, because you'll never have children, and you haven't got children. You might never say no. You haven't got children. But, you know, there is that. Children is one of those ways in which they help us to open up our hearts, because they are pure in their expression. They are open-hearted, they're creative, they're imaginative.
This is why so many people want me to be their godfather. You know, I relish that connection. For me, though, it comes without any conditions, and it's nice to hand them back. But I totally understand that dynamic.
Yeah, yeah. And I learned that through my kiddies, you know. And I was just astounded afterwards that that's what I was learning with my children. They were teaching me how to be a child. Because our mind gets so much in the way that we don't know how to play anymore. We lose knowing how to play. Children teach us how to play. And that begins to loosen the structure of our ego, because our egos are so richified as we grow up that it gets really hard to see through the filters. Anything. To really see anything through the filters. And children, they just help us.
What I like about being with children is the fact that I can just embrace my inner child and no one's going to think I'm crazy, you know. So it's full. When I'm with my godkids, you know, it's a real opportunity for me to be the fool and to enjoy it as much, to immerse myself into that without the worry of people saying, "Oh, he's behaving a bit weird." Whereas actually, I guess the way in which I see it is I do actually try to, you know, I just imagine no one is there as much as possible. You know, I'm having fun, I'm having play, just as a child would do. But when I'm with children, it just means that I don't have to worry about so much what people are thinking about me.
Sure. And a lot of parents would say, I love my child. They think that they love their children. But I don't know if I'm going to get a lot of pushback here. What a lot of parents call love is not love. It is identification. Because we're still in ego. And so what we do is we identify with our child. That was true for me, first 5 years of my life. As soon as my firstborn came through, it was like seeing myself. In fact, it was seeing myself. And I loved my child. I was there for him all the time. I was in love with my child. Not true. I was in love with myself. Or rather, no, I wasn't even that. I was seeing myself in him. And I wanted for him what I hadn't received in my own childhood.
So often people say that projection, isn't it?
I was projecting.
Like, I never had this, so I'm going to give this to you.
Yes.
And then I had this a lot, and then it's thrown back in my face. Like, I gave you this, I taught you to read, I did. I'm like, whoa, the conditions.
There you go. Yeah.
You know?
So it's not real love in the true sense. It's still love. It's ego love, but it's not real love. It's self-centered love, although we're not in touch with that. We think we are truly in love with our child, but we're trying to meet a need within ourselves, which is missing in us. And so what we're doing is we're now taking from our child. That is not giving, although it sounds like it, because real love does not give.
It's filling a hole within the person, isn't it?
Yeah, we're trying to give.
Feeding off that energy.
Yes, but except we're not really doing it.
No.
It just seems like it.
Yeah.
And now, you know, I'm gonna get so many of you who are parents says, "Oh no, but I really love my child." And yes, you do. But this isn't from your ego. This is from your soul. The thing about real love is that real love is dispassionate. Real love does not differentiate between my child or my neighbor. Because real love is a feeling and it is a seeing without judgment. Whereas with our children, however much we say we love them, we judge them. There is judgment of one sort or another. I'm not saying you shouldn't, okay? I'm not specifying you should be one way or another. I'm simply saying, look, this is one and this is the other. And we will never get rid of our egos. Ego is there for life. And it's important to acknowledge that we have different sorts of pull. So with a child, we have an emotional pull. We have a bonding. We bond with them. You know, I've bonded with my kids. It doesn't matter how long it is till I see them. When I see them, that emotional bond is there. It bypasses my mind. It comes from my emotions. It doesn't come from my feelings. It doesn't come from my heart. It comes from my emotions. And this is what we often call love. I love my children. No, what I do is I have a bonding with my child, because that is our genetic makeup. Because if we didn't have them, we'd kill them within the first couple of years in life, because they can become a real pain after a while, because we're so screwed up ourselves. We start to screw them up, and then when they start to become devious and liars and all manner of things, we can't stand them anymore. Because they're saying, look at me, mommy, look at me, daddy, look at me. And we go, yeah, whatever, you know, go and play with someone else, give me time to be by myself.
But that's a reflection back to them of the unease that they feel, the inadequacies and the darkness that they've got, and the shadow, whatever you want to call it, of going in with it. So then it's a disgust, because it's just like, oh, I'm really looking at myself here.
So if we didn't have that bonding, the human race would have been gone long ago. And, you know, all animals are like that. I mean, if I look at the chickens, you know, they're very protective of them. They will fight anybody for those chickies. But as soon as they've grown to a certain size, oh, bugger off, I don't want you anymore. And they push them away. They don't want them anymore. Go and find your own piece of dirt to get some worms from, because this now is mine and I need to make room for the next stage. So there are biological dimensions, and there are emotional dimensions, and there are mental dimensions, and they all pull together in different ways, and we think we love another person, but it's all ego, and it doesn't satisfy. Ultimately, it never satisfies, because we are looking for love, real love. And real love can only come from the soul. The soul within us, the soul fragment within us, is the fountain, is the sun, is the sunshine. We can bask in the sunshine all day long. It will never dry up. Relationships with other people are always subject to etiquette, to different, different times of the month, different dimensions of how we are with each other, the state of our being, the state of the other person's being. There's just so much complexity, and it all gets in the way. And then we're hurt, we're painful. I know people who they've been married for years, and they have a tiff, and then they don't speak to each other for a week, 2 weeks, sullen. But they hang on to each other. They stay together either for the children or because they don't think they can be with anyone else, for whatever. But it's all to do with need. It's not to do with love, not real love. And a lot of people settle for that.
Making do.
Yeah, they make do. A lot of people make do. And I'm not saying you should go and change who you are, do something else, because everybody's where they're meant to be. Everybody, at any given moment in time in their life, they are with the person, the experience, the work, which is helping them to understand a part of their psyche which is out of step, out of harmony, suppressed, in pain, whatever. And it's important because experience is the currency of life. It's all about experience. And there's no such thing as a good or bad experience. There is more intense or less intense. But it's all experience.
I think the mistake is when we keep repeating the same mistakes and we don't learn from them. But that's only when you're ready as well, isn't it? So everything happens as it needs to happen.
Absolutely. And I won't go there, but there's many reasons for that. But yes, we tend to go through cycles in our lifetimes, and we will repeat experiences 1, 2, 3 times, and then finally we're ready to move on to the next stage. We all do this. But real love, which is really the place we want to get to, because that is the place from which we experience the world as it truly is. People call it enlightenment, perhaps, I don't know. I'm never quite sure what that word means, enlightenment. I've heard it so many times through the whole of my lifetime. But in truth, I don't really know what it means. Enlightened, to see more clearly, I don't know.
That one works best for me, yeah.
I prefer experience. Experience is more valuable than the label of enlightenment. To get to the heart is the goal. And we don't need to be in the heart all the time, but we need to open the gates towards the heart so that the heart, i.e. the sunlight, opening the shutters, thinning the filters, so the sun can stream through the ego. Because ultimately, the only part that can satisfy the ego, we all have ego needs. They'll never go away. We all need to be fed. But the only person who can feed us is ourselves. But it's not the person, it is the fragment of soul within ourselves. So, true love comes from within ourselves to ourselves. And the only way we get there is by seeing ourselves. First of all, you need to have all the three brains working together. Because if you've only got two brains, you're not even here. You know, with three brains you can be here, present. The mind's still ticking in the background, emotions are still going in the background, physical pains, distortions, whatever in the background, but you're here. You're still in the moment. That is like, if you like, the foundation. Because it's only by being here that we can then, oh yes, I'm telling porkies, I'm lying to myself, I'm lying to the other. I'm pretending to be rich, I'm pretending to be wiser, I'm pretending to be... They're all lies. Why am I trying to send myself up? Because I want people to notice me? So we need to become aware of that. You can only be aware of all the three brains are working. My emotions, I get anxious. Well, I need to be aware that I'm actually anxious, not just reactive. You know, I will react. We all react. Every human being in the world reacts. The question is, can I then stop myself from just going on and on and on and on ad infinitum? Can I turn my reaction away from... Can I turn my reaction away from total down and out anxiety or road rage or whatever? Put myself in perspective, acknowledge, experience my anxiety. So connect with the cause. I need to connect with the cause. Often, it was certainly true for me, one of the ways that I learned was for my mind, I would have an altercation with someone or other, and I would then go away, and my mind would be racing. I would have said this, I would have said the other, and it just keeps repeating and repeating and repeating. Realize that that is an avoidance of an emotion. And so when I see that going on in my head, I say to myself, what's my emotion? What's going on? I focus on my lower abdomen. What was I didn't want to use the word feeling, but everybody knows what I mean by feeling. But it's not feeling. What's my sensation? Because it is a sensation in the body. What's my sensation? What am I avoiding? And so I then connect. And when I connect with that, I connect with the emotion, then the mind begins to quiet down. The mind was just trying to protect me from what it thought was too much intensity, emotional intensity. Because that's what we learn when we're young. We learn to protect ourselves, and so we learn to disconnect. So we disconnect from our emotions, we disconnect from our bodies. That's how our minds disassociate us from reality.
There you go.
So this is what we do with our minds. With our emotions, well, I used to just sit down, meditation every morning, and in the quietness of that moment, connecting with my body, I would be overwhelmed with emotion. I would go with it. I would experience the emotional intensity without knowing the label for that emotion. I didn't know to know the label because we all carry bucket loads of emotional intensity within us. And you can't separate, You pour a bit of water into a bucket, another bit of water, another bit of water. You can't say this is that water or that water. It's all water. So just experience it, go with it. Or I would listen to some music, or I would listen to a play whilst doing some other physical activity. So I wasn't connected with my emotion, but I was doing something else. And then suddenly, boom, the emotion would surface within me and woof, I'd be overwhelmed and I would go with it. Experience it. Keep emptying. You know, it's a huge barrel and all you've got is a little glass. And every time it happens, you just take a little bit more water out. A little bit more water out. We want to get to the bottom of the barrel, because until we get to the bottom of the barrel, it's a filter. It stops us seeing clearly. And so we clear the emotional filter by going with the emotions, by connecting the emotions to our bodies, because the emotions in motion, their movement through the body. Emotion is sensation. Sensation is in the body. The emotions and the body, they're interlinked, though hand in hand. The mind suppresses the emotion and the emotion twists the body. Yeah? We cannot separate one from the other in that sense. And so we work our way through this little by little. So we clear the filters. So we see more and more clearly. And it takes time. It doesn't happen overnight. But every time you take a glass out, there's that little bit less. And I had a bloody swimming pool. I didn't just have I had so much water to clear. I spent a lifetime crying my eyes out just to clear my swimming pool. So if I can make it, so can you. Don't despair. But this is what we have to do. We need to clear the filter so that we can see the world more clearly. And ultimately, as we see ourselves, so our heart begins to open up. You see, when we're clearing ourselves, we always begin from the top, right? You're not clearing the bottom of the pool. You're not clearing the bottom of the barrel. You're taking it away from the surface. So whatever emotions are the least painful, they're the ones which are at the top. And they're the ones that we're clearing. Every time you have a meditation, every time you have a therapy session, every time you listen to a piece of music and it allows it to go through you and you work with it. Every time you give yourself the permission to express your emotions, you're clearing. You're clearing. The trick is to clear faster than you're building up. Because we are suppressing all the time.
Yeah.
And we may have a lot, so we want to clear away faster than we're putting back in. And this is a discipline that we have to do. Yeah, all of us.
Yeah.
Even these days I still do it. My barrel is pretty empty these days. But I'm still prone to anxiety because my tree is gnarled. My tree is very gnarled. I had a shitty childhood, really shitty, and I'm really damaged. And it's important to acknowledge this. I am really damaged. I'm damaged physically, and I'm damaged emotionally, and I'm damaged mentally. Yes, I am damaged mentally. And there's nothing I can do about that. But what I have managed to do is I've managed to clear the filters. And so my sun shines through. It doesn't shine through all the time. I'm damaged. But it damages through more regularly than most people. And I can see reality as it is more clearly than most people. and I'm still damaged. So just to be clear that none of us get away with it. However, because I am damaged, whenever I get anxious, if I don't go with that anxiety and experience it fully, then it will sit within me and it will begin to build up. So the bottom of the barrel, because I don't have a swimming pool anymore, but the bottom of the bucket, I'll call it a bucket now, I've got a bucket. So the bottom of the bucket begins to fill up. And so then I need to spend time going in and just go with the emotions, experience the intensity of it. And that will happen with me maybe 2-3 times a month now. When I really need to go in there, it's not like I need to go in there, it just happens. And I go with it, and I experience it, and I release, and I'm back to normal. So don't despair, but you need to realize that ego love is important, but it's not real love, and it will never truly satisfy. We need to go into our hearts, but to get into our hearts, we need to accept ourselves, and we need to accept we're damaged, and we need to stop all the self-criticisms, all the put-downs that somehow we're less than. And we need to stop being concerned as to what other people think of us, how other people see us. You know, one of the problems with human beings is that we're really comfortable with each other because we're all very concerned as to the other person is seeing us, so we're not comfortable in each other's presence. And a real relationship requires that we are who we are. Yeah? With all our faults, all our damage, all our childishness, all our little foibles, idiosyncrasies. This is who I am. Take it or leave it. If you cannot accept me as I am, don't bother. And vice versa. If you've got friends, so-called friends, few people have friends. Most people say, oh, I've got this. People, oh, I've got thousands of friends. No, you haven't. You've got thousands of acquaintances. A friend is a person you can be yourself with, who accepts you at face value. So if you really dwell on that, you'll see there's very few people who have many friends. You may have 1, 2, 3, if you're lucky. But there are few people, oh, I got friends from my childhood. 40 years have gone by, you still got that emotional bond. But then what happens? You realize your perception of the world is totally different. You can't accept each other as you are today. Real love is being able to see ourselves truly as we are. And then we can see others as they are. And then we focus on loving rather than on someone loving us. I've said this before quite a few times. For me, once I've cleared the swimming pool of my emotional traumas, and I finally cleared my traumas to do with my mother, once I cleared the decks truly, I was in a position to really love. And love has to be cultivated in the ego. We need to teach ourselves how to love. We find a person or animal, it doesn't matter, who we are in synchronicity with. And now we focus on what we like about them. And the more we do that, the more the feeling emanates from us. we're not focusing on what we want from them, what we like about them in relation to us, but what we enjoy about this other person. How do we get joy? Because when you're in joy, you're in love. Because joy, love is synonymous. Joy, love, acceptance, they're all the same word. They're different words, but they all describe the same experience of feeling, of seeing. So it's all one. But this is how we, what's the word? Oil the hinges of the heart. You know, we all come to the world with a heart which is pretty much open, and then it shuts down, the hinges go rustic, and now we want to really open them. When children come into our world, they begin to open a little bit. But until we clear all the damage inside us, all the suppressed, all the filters, all the pain, suffering, emotional suppression, call it what you will, until we clear that, you know, they're still pretty rusty. And then we get to the point when we actually need to begin to practice the real opening. And that has to be a deliberate act on our part. And so we focus on what gives us joy. For me, it was my wife. I focused on my wife every night. I still do. I still do. But for about 5-6 years, every single night without fail, I would spend a good 5 minutes before falling asleep just focusing on her. What I really enjoyed, how I got pleasure from her, just being with her. And that would just, my feelings of love would just surface, and I would be filled with so much joy. And the interesting thing about that is that it is contagious. Because when we feel from our hearts, there's a vibrational energy that emanates from us, which is felt by the other person. And the more, I always know how well my relationship is going by how much she loves me. Because when I get miffed and my heart shuts off, then she's not so loving with me. But as soon as I reconnect and I open up my heart, suddenly she's all lovey-dovey with me again. Because she is responding to my love. And, you know, she's got a heart, she's got hinges, she needs to protect herself. So if my love doesn't flow towards her, then she's a little bit unsure, and her hinges closing a bit.
Life is a resonance process.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we're all bound. You see, we're all bound together. And I think we'll finish with this. You know, I began by sharing how we reflect the world. You know, what's inside us is reflected externally. And the world at the moment is a shitty place. You know, there's wars everywhere, there's the economy is up the spout, there's fear galore, there's manipulation galore, and we see each other with suspicion, so that the heart is shut. So we as individuals, we need to take it upon ourselves to begin to see ourselves clearly, so that we can see the world clearly. And we need to open up our hearts. We need to clear the bucket, right? I'll say you got a bucket. I don't know whether If you guys have got swimming pools, it's going to be a few years. But we clear the backlog. We focus on opening up our hearts. And as we do that, so we resonate. Our heart feeling energy resonates outwards. It vibrates, it spreads from around us, all the way to the villages, to the countries, to the nations. The more of us who can do this, who are willing to do this, who come to this place and are happy to do this, then the sooner we will change the dynamics of this world. So let me finish as I began. I want just with a little bit. Love gives not but itself, and takes not but from itself. Love possesses not, nor would it be possessed. For love is sufficient unto love. So love neither wants nor takes. It just is. It's an expression of being. It's an expression of seeing.
And I think to find or to experience real, genuine love in these times is perhaps the most powerful thing. You know, to actually make it this far is a pat on the back and a clap, I feel, because it's stacked against us.
Absolutely. So, hopefully, guys, within a few years, we'll all be sharing heart to heart, eh? But for now, all the best. And, if you enjoy our podcast, please give a like, share with others, because this is how other people will get to hear what we have to say. This is how YouTube works. The more people like us, the more other people will come to listen to what we have to share. All the best for now.